Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. I'm your host, Allie Jane Ayers.
And I'm John Owens, pinch hitting for Shane this week.
And this is episode 155, being recorded on August 20th, airing August 21st. Just a reminder to you folks, you can email us your finance questions at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com, and we will answer them live on the air. Today on the show, we've got resumes ghosted by robots and AOL ghosting dial-up after 30 years, RIP modem noises. John, can you give me your best AOL dial-up sound?
Yeah.
Perfect. And we will round out the show with some excellent questions from our listeners and a few Reddit ones as well. How are you doing, Mr. John Owens?
I am doing well. It is false fall here on the East Coast, and so it feels good to walk outside and not break out into a sweat 3 seconds into it. So I'm digging it.
Love that for you. I really do. I had to escape the humidity. It was getting to my brain like a flesh-eating fungus, so I escaped to the Great American Southwest, where it's 105, but the humidity is basically negative. You have to drink twice as much water to stay alive, which is really my favorite kind of environment. I wanted to add a segment to our podcast this week, which is, I'm calling this the best use of AI this week. I have one. I don't know if you have one, John. So I will start.
You told me about this 5 minutes ago, by the way. I've been trying to.
So we'll give you. Okay. So John doesn't use AI. He's a little bit behind.
I'm just trying to figure out what in my. I'm trying to figure out what in my ChatGPT history I wanted to share with our millions of listeners. Yeah.
So I'll start with mine. So big fan of the Dyson product family. Dyson Airwrap for hair. Dyson vacuum cleaners. Which are fantastic. And we have a little handheld one that has an attachment. It fits in your closet, but the battery died. And, Dysons are indestructible, $400, but you have them for a lifetime. But the batteries die every, 5 to 10 years. Anyway, I was like, Jesus Christ, I got to figure out which battery to get. This is going to be a nightmare. But I just took a photo of it, uploaded to ChatGPT and said, what battery do I need? And it sent me an Amazon link for $40. So I will update everyone next week as to whether the battery actually was the right one. But problem solved in about 12 seconds, as opposed to me doing a frustrated deep dive watching someone's 35-minute product video.
Yeah, I don't have one that I'm thinking of from the last week, but I have a fantasy football draft tonight, and I'm going to use AI to get some tips as to what I should be thinking about going into the draft, rather than reading 17 articles about it. Let's get some quick hitters on how to help me.
What was the funny football thing yesterday that I didn't know?
I said that we were working on something, and I said, okay, I'm going to move the ball forward on that this quarter. And you were like, does that mean you're not doing it? Does that mean you are doing it? Or what does that mean, John? And I'm like, yes, I'm carrying the ball forward. That's a good thing. I'm advancing this. But
I don't know. We were talking about a project, an initiative that we've been talking about for years. And you were like, I'm going to move the ball forward on this one. And I thought you meant I'm going to kick the can down the road for another quarter.
I didn't say I was going to punt. I said I'm going to move the ball forward.
Okay.
Come on. Let's
go. All right. Anyway, please translate your football analogies to us liberal arts challenged individuals. All right.
Did Skidmore have a football team? Skidmore did not have a football team. It all starting to make sense, folks.
D3 in everything except tennis and horse race. What? Equestrian. There you go. Yeah. We were the thoroughbreds. That was our mascot.
Shocking.
Saratoga Springs. Anyways, speaking of shocking, millions of resumes never made it past the bots. One man is trying to find out why. We have a Wall Street Journal article about the companies like Workday, which is specifically called out in this article, using AI to screen candidates. And one man who applied to 100 jobs over a 2-year period did not receive a single call back and wondered if he was being unfairly discriminated against because of his age, race, and I think some disclosures about mental health, I believe. That wasn't totally clear for me. What's your take on this article, Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing AI in both sides of the hiring process. I think we're seeing AI doing some of the initial vetting for a lot of bigger companies in particular, or places that use the SaaS tools like Workday. I think on the other hand, though, we're seeing AI aid in the application process, and that's a good thing. I think everybody has a career coach at their disposal in ChatGPT these days, and so I'm not sure how this balances out. What was your takeaway looking at how AI is kind of just like weeding out people and doing that initial screen?
I mean, it would be silly not to use AI if you're a large, if you're a big company like Microsoft, you're hiring, I'm going to make myself sound stupid by guessing here, but I don't know, thousands of people per quarter. Like, even if you have a giant HR team, it doesn't make sense to not use this tool to say, hey, how many years of experience does this person have? Do they work at our 6 competitors? What are the red flags that we don't want? Is there a resume gap? Things like that. And yeah, of course, when you use technology and you don't rely on human interactions, you're going to miss out on people. It's like dating, right? If you only use online dating apps, you are going to self-select for people that are on dating apps, as opposed to meeting the love of your life at the, screening of the random Polish film because you both happen to like this director. Like, then you have something, in common, which is lovely. Anyway,
unlike the dating apps, which what you have in common is that you're both on you're both on dating apps. Yeah, but I mean, I do think.
Sorry, I lost the plot here. What I wanted to say was, yes, I think it's a productivity game. I mean, you can't not use it if it's a larger company. I mean, a firm like ours, we're probably, depending on growth, we're hiring between 1 and 5 people a year. We have the luxury of human screening. However, I will say that we had an opening for an HR position. Did we receive like 400 applications?
We got over 200 applicants like a day and a half. We had to take the posting down because it was on. We did not have AI screening people, and we literally did not have the bandwidth to go through all the applications, in part because we were hiring an HR person to do that. We didn't have one. I was the HR person.
The irony is delicious. Right, but I mean, this is another example of it's AI on both sides. So we get a situation where AI, ChatGPT is writing the resumes. ChatGPT is writing the resumes to feed into the AI screening. So it's we're talking about the date. Speaking of dating, we're talking about the bots who you send your bot to do a pre-screen on the date. They go on a bot date before you go on a real life date. So I do believe that when you build technology, there is human bias in technology, right? There was that study a few years ago where the hand waving sensors for getting paper towels out were racist because they had trained it on a certain skin tone. So there is gonna be bias. Yeah. So, but it's an interesting case, and basically the judge sort of dismissed it but left it open to say, well, if someone else can prove this in the future, I'm willing to say that this was discrimination. So super interesting topic. I mean, I think the world is ripe for people who can manipulate and use AI to their gain, like the people that we hear about consistently who have 3 different W-2 jobs.
I love Reddit overemployed, by the way. Just scrolling through there and reading some of the crazy shit is pretty interesting to me. But
speaking of crazy shit, what was your AIM screen name in the year 2000?
I think I got an AOL screen name. 2002, I think, is when I got it. Kelly went off to college, and so we could stay in touch. I got an AOL account, and actually, my initial screen name is the same as my socials now, JohnTFO. But then I added 4 different ones. Newspaper 2011 was one of mine that I used quite a bit. But I'm back to JohnTFO. What about you? What were you?
I was Peaches. Okay. I was PeachesNPunk. Thank you very much. Letter N.
Ooh, okay. Punk rock, pixie princess AJ from the early aughts.
If Manic Pixie Dream Girl had existed as a concept, I would have gone that way. Anyway, the reason why I'm asking is because sadly, AOL Instant Messenger, AOL, the parent company, will stop offering dial-up internet service after more than 30 years in business. I mean, talk about growing up, having a front row seat to the information age. I remember logging in and your internet was that little pop-up that was AOL, and it was 2 news headlines, and then you'd log into chat, and then you'd go into chat rooms with weird people and you'd lie about your age. What a time to be alive.
And you'd build your buddy profile, right? Which is like OG social media is what was your buddy profile link and what were you putting in there?
Yeah, what dashboard confessional lyric were you pasting, et cetera,
for your
et cetera.
away message? Yeah. Like, like don't even bother, you don't care.
Your hair is everywhere, et cetera.
But I remember the in our one house, the computer was in the basement, and I remember like my mom yelling on the stairs, like, "Get off the internet! The phone. I'm waiting for a phone call." Yeah, because people were calling the house phone still often, and I was blocking up that line.
Yeah, I think that was like the right amount of internet. Although I do remember like that was like the right amount of allotment. Although I do remember being over at friends' houses and like opening emails and just getting like full page like full frontal nudity porn spam emails that would take like 20 minutes to load.
Oh dear God. Yeah.
Anywho, the point of this, I don't even know why we're talking about this.
Dial-up's going away, and
dial-up's going away.
Rest in peace, dial-up.
Have you ever listened to the podcast Acquired, by the way?
I've not, no.
It's an excellent podcast, and basically they do these deep dives. They're like 2 to 4 hours long of like the history of companies. I actually haven't listened to this one, but it's from season 1, and it's about the AOL Time Warner merger, and it's an interview with a guy who has a podcast called the Internet History Podcast. It's been in my bookmarks for a while to listen to. So if you're interested in kind of how AOL was the internet for so many people to now being relegated to the Museum of the Internet History, kind of an interesting trajectory. Kids, Gen Z will never know. Will never understand that sound.
Or like how slow that
slow
was.
it was.
I mean, they would lose their minds if they had to wait the way we needed to wait for things to load.
Remember the sound of a new instant message, like ka-ching, like it was a blue. I can't even do it. Okay. You posted something on LinkedIn, my favorite dating site. How do we solve the cost of? It's 7:00 in the morning, John. I'm on fire. I've had some iced coffee. Life is great.
Buckle up, folks.
How do we solve the cost of childcare problem? You threw an extra E in there.
Problem
in the U.S. You searched for creative solutions. What were some creative solutions? Childcare, biggest expense for many households.
Biggest expense for many. I mean, if we look at our clients, it's like taxes, childcare, housing. Maybe for some people it's housing, then childcare, depending on if they're all in a rent stabilized 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, it might be childcare, depending on when they got in there. But a couple things. First of all, I want to just go back and be like, why is this such a big expensive issue? I feel like it was a cost when we were younger, AJ, but not as big of a thing. And I think there's a few factors that are driving that. Number one, people don't live as close to their families as they used to. And so we have a more mobile society. The greatest generation, which would be our grandparents, who, I don't know about you, but my grandparents watched me quite a bit growing up. Especially the women in the greatest generation. Yeah, exactly. And especially women in the greatest generation didn't work nearly as much as women in the boomer generation. And so their grandma was available a lot more to do childcare. And
we're blaming women? Perfect.
We're not blaming. No, we're not. We're not. Men actually were less
I know where you're going.
in the boomer generation, which is very interesting to see. Looking at the data. And then I think the last piece thinking about is that people are working longer than they used to as well. And so apparently, this was surprising, the average age for a first-time grandparent is like in the early 50s. My parents are in like their late 60s and don't have any grandkids. And, your parents, similar. And so it's like, wait a minute. I guess, I'm part of the problem here. But a lot of people, when they are having kids, their parents are still working, and that might have been the care before. But there's also a lot of regulations.
It's just not assumed. It's not talked about, right? It's not. Yeah. It used to be like, yes, the grandparents were. I don't know. There was like this like caricature of your grandparents who probably lived with you or lived nearby in a smaller place, and you would go to grandma's house to be watched or go to grandma's house on the weekend. And now we're across the country or across the world, and grandma's still running a Fortune 500 company. And grandpa's still at the office,
but I think this is the like slow death and prolonged death of what's they call the small favors economy. And I don't think childcare of like 5 days a week is a small favor, by the way, but just the fact, to be clear.
Quick favor. Can you just watch my infant for 7
for 5 years? So just
reminder to not be John Owens' friend when he has children.
A quick little ask. No.
Quick question. Quick question. You're going to Auntie AJ's for a month.
Yeah. Bye. It's in Palm Springs. Put on some sunscreen. But yeah, the real question though is like, how do we fix this? How do we make this better? And I think part of the solution, Wall Street Journal had a piece on this today, is like, if we had more pre-K, preschool stuff, then kids are going off to school. Those ratios are not as intense in a school type setting as they are in daycare settings. And then you just have less kids in daycare, childcare, and therefore you have more availability, right, to spread that out. But we don't, pre-K and preschool is different all over the country. Which is part of it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think on the, again, this is just, it's like what kind of job do you have? Are you a white collar worker that can pick your kid up from pre-K at 2 p.m. or are you required to be somewhere to do some kind of manual labor or punch numbers into a computer from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. exactly? And to take off work means lost wages. That's where we start to get this debate. And we've had this conversation with clients. I have run projections to say a couple has asked us as their financial planner, which one of us should be the stay-at-home parent? And it's a question of, sure, salary is like the easiest one. Well, your salary is 50% higher than, spouse A is 50% higher than spouse B. Yeah. However, spouse B has incredible benefits and is never going to get fired because they have tenure and there's a lot of factors to think about. So unfortunately, I think in a lot of cities, the answer is one parent stays home for a few years and takes a career break until school, public school is available. I agree. This is like an insurmountable problem. I think you also forgot healthcare as one of the biggest expenses that people have.
Absolutely.
And look, and your child can have various degrees of expense. I have friends who have kids in summer camp right now for 8 weeks. That's like 10 grand just out the door. But also you get your 10 weeks without your kids. So
and when you could just send them to Auntie AJ's instead. I don't really know why all those children aren't with you in Palm Springs right now.
It's 10 grand a week here at Auntie AJ's. We've got golf lessons, cooking lessons, teach you how to make a martini. Your kids will come back.
Camp AJ would be bougie AF, folks. Okay, you don't want, if you're trying to save costs on childcare, Camp AJ would not be the place to go.
Which is so funny because I did not grow up growing up. It was like camping, and I think like going on vacations like with my parents, like camping made me like, instead of like falling in love with the great outdoors and camping, I was like, never again. I must work so hard so that I can make sure that I do not go camping ever.
So you don't have to, if you have kids, you don't want to make them go, they will not have to go camping.
Oh yeah, my kids will have traveled the world. Like I didn't leave the country until after high school. My kids will have left the country 5 times before they go to pre-K. Anyway. Speaking of leaving the country, the rest of the world is ahead of the US in terms of adopting a more sane 4-hour work week, a more flexible schedule.
4 day, not 4 hour.
Jesus Christ. Sorry. Tim Ferriss, always in the brain.
Isn't that a book? Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss, which I actually haven't read, but apparently you're supposed to just like outsource all your problems when you're anyway. 4-day work week, folks. Forgive me. We are talking about what it means to have a little flexibility in your schedule. And employers are realizing that if they want to compete on talent, they can offer flexibility and say, hey, get all your work done, instead of actually measuring getting your work done by being in your, butts in the chair 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Here's some KPIs. Here's some metrics you need to hit. If you can hit all that in 4 days, you don't have to come in on Friday or Monday. I would want to take Wednesday off personally. I like a little midweek reset.
Insane. I think that's insane. It's like you get another Sunday in the middle of your week, and all you're thinking about Wednesday afternoon is how you go back to work on Thursday. Oh,
no, it's great. So yeah, we've seen this across. Last week we were talking about Iceland, where like 90%. I mean, Iceland's not a real place because it's like
how many people live in Iceland? 90%
of a monoculture.
People in Iceland.
Yeah, exactly. But after they've run these. It's a great. It's like a lab experiment, right? Because it's such a small country and it's a monoculture. So with shorter hours, they had no loss in productivity. We've also seen a lot of experiments in the UK, Belgium, Japan, Portugal. We have a 4-day work week at Brooklyn FI during the summer. We've experimented with that.
Yeah.
I was getting to that. Yeah, it's not all summer, but it's July. July. Every Friday is off in July, and then every other Friday for basically from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And it works. Obviously, like, emergencies come up and you can't be totally offline, and we want to take care of our clients. But for the most part, I know our employees are not working a full 8-hour day on a Friday in the summer. So, like, let's just, like, stop pretending and give them the day off. That's where my head goes.
The half day or the full day. Yeah. No, I hear you. I think it's interesting. In order for something like this to really become the norm, though, it needs to be adopted more so on a national level. That there's almost an expectation that you're not going to get an email back from somebody on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, right? You're kind of moving to a permanent 3-day weekend setup. I think otherwise it's going to be clunky, right? Because, also we're in a service-based business here, and clients need things on Fridays. They might be making an offer on a house, need some money out of their portfolio. We've solved that for our summer Fridays. We have folks that cover and keep an eye on things if anything urgent comes up. But I think it's going to be interesting how it can apply across industry. Healthcare is a good example of an industry where, my brother-in-law is a nurse. He works 3 12-hour shifts a week and, has 4 days off and loves it. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do his job, but I wouldn't mind his hours.
Yeah. You can work those hours. That's fine with me. I don't care.
3 12s. Instead of my 5 12s? Okay, that's interesting.
Exactly. All right. Ha ha ha. Okay, let's get to some listener questions. This is a question from Reddit. I love this one. What to include in my net worth? And this person asks, of course, things like liquid investments count, but what about things like carried interest, private angel investments, etc.? For example, angel investment is high risk, but if I have $1 million invested across a bunch of companies, I don't think it's zero either. But in the eyes of the banks, it is. What is your take on? Yeah, obviously. What is your take on how do you calculate your net worth, John?
Yeah, great question. I thought this guy got lit up on Reddit because because most people on Reddit are kind of assholes.
It's like assets minus liability.
Yeah. Just so you know how a balance sheet works, and I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. But I think
that's not what
he's asking a real question here of how do I think about risky, illiquid assets. And I think you should value them conservatively. I don't think you should say they don't exist at all, but I think you should be reasonable to say, hey, this is what I invested in it. Maybe this is what I could sell it at today, right? For certain private investments, angel investments, that sort of thing, if you're selling it maybe within a year of buying it, you might have to take a 5% haircut, a 10% haircut for taking money out too soon. And so that might be how you value it on your balance sheet. Personally, I've tracked my balance sheet for years. Every month, I take a snapshot in time. Yeah.
That's so shocking to me.
Yeah. No, it's not. I can tell you how much money I spent in Aldi in March of 2016 for crying out loud.
John, who won the high school financial planning competition, so tracks his
it was college, okay? But
whatever, judiciously. I think this is a risk tolerance question to me, because while I feel like I have a high risk tolerance, I also have a fear of camping, a fear of losing it all, let's call it. So I want to be extra conservative with my own financial plan. So yes, I realize that I am a majority owner in a successful business, but I don't put my shares of Brooklyn FI on my balance sheet because in my mind, we can run a valuation, we can hire a firm to do a valuation, but until someone's willing to pay that, it's not real. Right. And same with properties. People are on Zillow, my house is worth $2 million.
Your Zestimate.
Right. That's your Zestimate. But is someone actually willing to pay that? And also, are you going to be able to get that, let's call it $1 million profit because you've owned the house for 15 years, whatever. Are you going to be able to get that fast enough to continue your lifestyle? So I don't know. I think balance sheets, thank you to the Reddit people who jumped on this guy and explained assets minus liabilities. Really, it's what do you see as your liquid nest egg that can provide for your lifestyle? So I mean, like the way I would answer this question is sure, if you have $1 million spread across 15 different investments, the likelihood of all of those going to zero is very small. Personally, what I would do is say, okay, realistically, I'm going to take 25% of these. And I would be comfortable putting that on my personal net worth statement to say these are worth something. But however, the banks don't give a shit.
I was going to say, if you're getting a mortgage, are they going to be like, oh, cool? No.
This actually came up. Yeah, I published a Substack yesterday about, I kind of do these like...
Substack?
Yes, I do have a Substack. It's called
there we go.
Money Changes Everything. Little plug for you there. Yesterday I wrote about, I do these like little interviews where the question is like, am I saving enough? And it was a freelancer making $180,000 who just didn't know where the money was going. Yeah. And a commenter said, shouldn't they value their business as part of their long-term savings? And in this case, I said no, because it was a freelancer who has a design business with a few clients. Yeah. And if she loses the ability to work, her business is worthless. There are ways to turn that business into something with enterprise value. But as it stands today, if you are doing the work and your clients pay you to do it, if you lost the ability to use your hands and your eyes, your business would have zero value. So therefore, I wouldn't count it.
And I think, let's just take a step back. You threw a very important phrase out there, enterprise value. And I think some folks who are kind of not in the world of finance, who don't think about business all the time, might not understand what we mean by enterprise value. And what enterprise value is, what is the value of the business on its own without you working in it, right? If you were to just have this business operate and you were collecting a dividend from it, not involved in the day-to-day, that sort of thing, what money would you be able to get? And then what value would somebody else, if they were going to buy that business, assign to it? And in your example that you just gave, there's not much enterprise value if you are a service-based business and you do 100% of the servicing work yourself.
Yep. Unlike Brooklyn FI, which has a lot of enterprise value because I don't do shit right here anymore. And John does it all, so it's perfect. Anywho, another question. That was a great question. I love that. The next question is the best way to leverage. Here we are using $1 million here. How do I leverage my $1 million? Essentially, this person freed up a little more than $1 million liquid to invest. They've been looking at real estate opportunities, residential and commercial, considered starting a business from the ground up. But for the life of me, I just can't come up with something that sticks. I'm looking at buying a business. Yeah, I don't know.
I think the comment was something along the lines of the only businesses that are for sale are the ones that aren't making any money.
Aren't making any money.
So that was interesting. Because I do see a lot of folks kind of go down the path of, I want passive income. I'm going to buy a small and medium business that's not very efficient, and I'm going to teach mom and pop how to really run this thing. And it's like, well, you don't know shit about HVAC, so good luck. But
let's bring private equity into the bodega space. Good idea.
But I think this is a classic example of getting distracted by things that look really sexy from an investment perspective and make you feel like, wow, I've got this thing. It's very complex, that sort of thing. The vast majority of people that have $1 million to invest should probably, figure out how much they need to keep in cash. And if they're really long-term investors, put the vast majority of it in the stock market in a diversified way, and understand, what that allocation looks like, work with a professional. But that's a hell of a lot lower cost. It's much more diversified. And, I also think this person probably doesn't understand the tax complexity he's getting himself into if he's going to make, 10 different real estate investments. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it all comes down to me. Boredom is expensive. Wealth, if you have enough wealth to take care of all your wildest dreams and needs, and you have a lot left over, you are bored. You feel like you should be doing something. So what people do is, instead of sitting on their hands or getting a hobby or volunteering or providing childcare to their grandchildren, what they do is they make up these careers for themselves and they say, I'm an investor. And I am smarter than everyone because I have a little bit of experience from my 10 years as a consultant, and because I made a bunch of money, and then I made one good bet. It was the right place at the right time, and now I have all this extra cash. And I have decided that I am smarter than everyone, and I'm going to pick which investments are going to succeed, and I'm going to find the rental properties that are going to be cash flow positive within 6 months because I have the extra special skills. Yeah. And unfortunately, that just isn't true. And I think a lot of this comes from idleness and just not knowing what to do with their time and feeling like they have to do something. They need to have inertia. when unfortunately the best place is probably a diversified index fund.
Yeah, and I think, AJ, you said this, we were having a conversation a little while ago, and I think, like, my question for anybody in this scenario is fairly straightforward. Have you ever had $1 million before? Number one.
Yeah.
Have you ever advised anybody who's had $1 million before? Do you know how to navigate all this stuff? And if it's like, no, not really, maybe, but not exactly, like, then, like, you probably want some help, and you might want to go a little bit beyond Reddit to get that help.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading into this too much, but as I always do with everything, my sense is that this person is already taken care of, and this is kind of like fun money.
Okay.
That's what I get. But I mean, let's solve our earlier. Want to solve the childcare crisis? Become a nanny. You want purpose in your life? Raise someone else's kid.
Best I could do is private daycare conglomerate, PE-backed setup.
Exactly.
Probably.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Okay, last question. This is a real life listener question. I got a text from a friend yesterday the gist was, so my accountant let me know that I way overpaid my taxes in 2024. They're obviously on extension and probably just got to their return, which means I owe a lot less in tax this year, meaning they'll apply their overpayment to 2025. So they have some extra cash. I've got $250,000 in a savings account. I'd like to keep $100K in there. What should I do with the other $150K? What should this person do?
Well, I have some real estate opportunities. I'm kidding.
I have a private equity backed daycare connecting former tech CEOs to single mothers in inner city.
It's called Cradle, CRADL, and we're looking for our angel investors to help get us started.
What's the cradle robbing? Anyway. Okay, so my first thought was, this is great. You owe a lot less than you thought. This is fantastic. You are a diligent saver. You thought you were going to have a big tax bill this year, but it's, I don't know, we don't have all the facts here, but basically sounds like between $50,000 and $100,000 less than anticipated. So my first thought was like, well, you haven't filed your taxes for 2025 yet. The year ain't over. It's only August. So to me, it was a little bit of like, don't count your chickens before they hatch. So like, let's not assume, like your accountants are talking about what happened a year ago at this point, or almost 2 years ago at this point, about what happened from January 1st, 2024 to December 30th, 2024. So that was my first thought. My next thought was like, great, I love this inertia. Like obviously they've got it in cash, they've been conservative, but want to do something a little bit more. So my first thought was like, okay, let's max out the tax advantaged accounts. Like let's just do something, which would be do a backdoor Roth IRA, that's $7,000. And if you've got nieces or nephews or kids, put $10,000 in a 529 plan. So that's $17K you're investing for the long term, nice little tax benefit as that investment. So that was like my first initial this is extra, let's just do something, and then we can talk about how much else we want to invest. Thoughts?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think looking at that cash, right, I think it's good to have that emergency fund target. Sounds like it's $100,000 in this case. With the 150, right, you're on track. How much do we need for taxes this year? Do we know that for sure? What are tax advantage places to put it? And then what are your other goals? What's coming up on the horizon here in the next couple of years that might be that money might be earmarked for? Maybe you're going to buy a home and you need to actually keep this a bit more conservative for a down payment or something.
Yeah, I think a lot of friends ask me this all the time, which is like, I don't have a specific goal. Like, I don't know if I want to buy a house. Like, I'm single. I just moved to a new city. Like, I'm not sure. And there is this question of, I don't want it to sit in cash. I feel like it's just like going to while away there. So like, let's do the backdoor. Let's do the 529 plan. But like, go ahead and invest it in a taxable account. I think it's okay to be a little bit aggressive, especially, when you have high income. And like, look, we don't love to like have to sell our portfolio, under duress to make a tax payment. But at the end of the day, like, to me, that's not the worst outcome. Like, it's okay to take a little bit of risk. If you have $100K in cash, if this person wanted to go ahead and invest it in a diversified portfolio, they would have my blessing.
Yeah. And I think the only other question is like, hey, they're filing their taxes now. They typically owe a decent amount of taxes. And so like, is it somebody who's self-employed and maybe their income's a little lumpy and that's another piece of the analysis you'd want to think about.
My answer would be different if we were talking on November 20th and we had done a tax projection.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of year left, and a lot of people make a lot of their a lot of people slide on a bunch of revenue in Q3 and Q4. So,
absolutely. Well,
I think that is going to wrap us up for today. Awesome. John, it was a pleasure chatting with you as always. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. You can email us your financial problems at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. And finally, Stans can leave us a review if they want to be weird about it. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.